Hello, welcome to Senior Moments. I'm Dolly Simonovich. Not too long ago, I was at the Senior Center in the advisory board meeting, and I was talking to these people and asking them what kinds of things they'd like to see, and I brought up funerals. And I thought, you know, is that a good topic for my show? And one of the ladies had just lost her husband, and she said, absolutely. She said she and her husband had planned for their funeral ahead of time. So when the day came and she lost her husband, she called the funeral director, and from then on, everything was just taken care of. So she could spend her time in the loving arms of her friends and family instead of worrying about what to do for this and what to do for that and how much this costs. So as you may have surmised already, today I have a funeral director with me, and his name is Joseph Stinson, and I'd like to welcome him here today.
Thank you so much, Dolly. Appreciate this. Kind of you to do this.
I've just been, I don't want to say I've been dying to talk about you, but
okay.
you know,
That's
it
good.
just came out.
That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. I like that.
I looked on your website, and it had some designations behind your name. What do they mean?
Well, I'm a licensed funeral director.
Yes.
And I'm a licensed embalmer, and I'm nationally certified grief counselor. And also, I am certified for the eye enucleation surgery for the cornea transplants. So I work with the donor teams and that sort of thing. So that's how I actually, I'm able to participate in all the things I do, all parts of the funeral practice.
Okay, you own your own business.
Yeah, I own Coleman Cremation and Funeral Services. My wife and I were the owners. And we've been in practice here in Colma for about 17 years. And we are more of a low-cost provider. And we're able to do a lot of things that are different than you would find in a traditional funeral home. And one of them is that we don't embalm. And the law in California is that embalming is not required.
Really? That's interesting.
So there's a form that that everybody has to sign, either they want embalmed or not, the family, the immediate family. And the next of kin has to sign that document. And so that discussion comes up every time. What is the law in California? And it states on there, by the way, that embalming is not required in California, but refrigeration is required. And so that's what we have. And so from the time the person dies until we are able to either cremate or for burial, the person is in refrigeration until we're ready for the services or viewing and visitation.
You would do the embalming too? You have offices
We
for
can
that?
do it, we can have it done, but we're a green company. We're certified by the Green Burial Council.
And what does that mean?
That means that there is no embalming. And all the products, a lot of the products that we have are all green. We have green caskets, green urns, for
Really?
all natural, yeah, absolutely. And the green movement is quite...
It's the thing.
Yeah, it's coming around. You know, it's been around a long time. There is a cemetery now in Half Moon Bay, just a little bit south of Half Moon Bay, called Parissima Cemetery. And so we've been there for services, and they're all green. They're all natural. So there's no embalming. The casket and the wraps that they can put around the person, the shroud, are all natural, biodegradable. So it's an all-natural burial.
It just sinks down into the earth, and then
they open the grave. It's beautiful. I have to just tell you real quick here. It's beautiful because they open the grave, and then they line the bottom of the grave. This is all hand done too.
Yes.
They line it with pine. And then if the person's in the shroud, this is where the family members really participate.
So they can actually put them in the ground in just a shroud instead of a casket of any kind?
Oh yes, absolutely. No vaults, no grave liners, nothing. This is all natural, it's green. So they place the person with the shroud in there, and then the cemetery has a little area here where the dirt would be lined up, and they put flowers in there, and so everybody takes those flowers out and places them in the grave, and then the grave is closed. All natural, no grass cutting, it's just country.
See, now I always thought that you had to have a casket.
No, not at all.
Because we had a casket and a vault.
The vault issue is that if you ever would go around someplace, drive around in the country, and you'd see these old cemeteries, and you see where the stones are tilted,
Yes.
So that happened because in those days, those early days, they used wood to hold the walls of the grave for the burial. And they eventually decompose, so the ground sinks and the marker moves. So cemeteries now, the normal cemeteries, they require some type of a grave liner, and they use concrete. Now they don't have to be sealed, and the bottoms can be open just as long as they do that, and that holds the shape of the grave, so they're not always resetting stones and filling these graves in, so it holds the concrete.
Oh, so it doesn't sink in
Correct,
either.
right. But in a natural cemetery, like Parissima, the ground is natural, so it makes no difference what happens. And there's no markers put
They
on there.
don't flatten it out.
No, they don't
does
do
it?
anything. It's just all natural. It's a forest. It's just, you know, whatever it is there.
Oh, that's
It's
sweet.
beautiful.
I
And
want to be there.
That's where, so you know what, we went, and I thought everybody was with us was going like, this is the way we want to go. It's beautiful. The part that's beautiful is that the family participates. They're the ones actually doing the burying.
Really?
Really. And there's a big difference. So think of it this way. They participate in end-of-life care, right? Okay. They participate in all the healthcare decisions that are to be made. The doctor and the medical team will talk to the patient if they can, and the family. So they're involved all the way. And then when they have a natural burial, they're involved there too. I mean, it's beautiful. And it really is something to see. And for markers on the graves, you can use a stone, a natural stone, and write on it, and those types of things. That's how they would identify where the spot is. Or they just know it. Or they don't want anything on it.
What did you do to get into this?
Well, I'm from Pennsylvania, a small town east of Pittsburgh. And when I was 14, two of my friends got killed by a train, and I was the last one with them. And you know, when you're that age, you live with those kids, you know.
Of course.
So ever since then, I've been very interested. And eventually, when I got out of high school, I started into college, and then I eventually went to Mortuary College and got licensed and all of that. And then from there, I really felt that being a funeral director, and I'm pre-med and all that, so I had an excellent education, and I thought that that field could go in other directions. And so that's how I ended up in forensic and medical pathology and all the donor programs and all those types of things.
Do you specialize? Do you specialize like in cremation?
By the name itself, it's Coleman Cremation and Funeral Services. So we do both. Now, a lot of people today are having a service, then followed by cremation. So cremation is not just direct, you know, from the time they die, and as soon as we process all the papers, they cremate. A lot of people are going to have a service first.
And is
And
there
then
a viewing?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And where does this take place?
That could take place in the chapels we use, or in the churches, or places like that we have these, and we have a couple funeral director friends that we can use their funeral homes, and so it works out nice. Whatever the family wants, we're able to do it, but we're just lower cost because we don't have the big building.
So if they're not embalmed, you don't want to view too long, do you?
It's not related to that. I want to
It
tell
isn't?
you, no, embalming is not long-lasting. It's
Isn't
a
it?
temporary.
Oh.
So there's a big, you know, misconception. Embalming started back in the Civil War. So it's the only way that you could get people from here to here because of the slow process it took to do that. So they started to embalm. It's almost passé now because we have refrigeration. So in embalming, you cannot embalm the entire body. It's impossible. In refrigeration, the entire body is refrigerated. So decomposition is not really an issue. So we go to certain churches where we might have an evening service and followed by another service in the morning, and then the cemetery or cremation, and everything's fine, and we leave the person in the casket in the church.
Really?
Yeah. And when a person's not embalmed, they're much more who they are, much more natural. Embalming changes a lot. And I've been an embalmer since 1969, and I have all the experience there is, and I know the difference. And there's an amazing difference in natural. And sometimes you think of it this way: you die naturally, let's take care of you naturally.
Well, that's just adding embalming fluid to the soil, especially if you're being cremated.
You know, you just don't need to do it. I mean, I don't know how else to phrase that. And for some people who still believe that a sealed casket, a sealed vault, and embalming, they feel they're going to be preserved like that for eternity. And it's absolutely not true.
They decompose anyhow.
Exactly. In fact, the state of California makes all funeral homes have a written statement when people are looking at caskets that there is no scientific proof that any sealed casket protects anything. In so many words, I'm paraphrasing.
Ants are going to get you anyhow.
Absolutely, right. So I feel bad for people who do that and really want to believe that that's going to be eternity. Maybe that helps them in their mind, but the reality that they're facing today with their own eventual loss is more the truth side of it.
Well, how about the religions? How do they go in? I
Well,
mean, some people believe they're probably terrorized that I just said what I did, but they believe that it should go like this and this and this and this because their religion says that.
Yeah.
I would assume that you pretty much know what all the religions say and how
and
how
there's
to
not
deal with that.
anything in there that would require embalming.
Really?
Yeah, you can do anything you want. We sometimes we have to hold some for some families who have other family members traveling a distance, and it might be a week or 10 days, sometimes 2 weeks, maybe longer, and so it's perfectly fine to hold, and the viewing is perfect.
And hold just in refrigeration,
Yeah,
not
exactly
in a
right.
freezer. You don't
Not
have to
frozen,
freeze them.
just in a refrigeration.
Just in refrigeration.
Right, exactly. It works perfect.
Oh, that's so interesting.
If I was to embalm after a week or two like that, there would be a lot of issues that I would have to deal with because of dehydration from formaldehyde. This way we don't have that issue.
We talk about funerals, and I mean, there's a mystery to death and dying,
Right,
and there's
exactly.
a mystery to funerals, and it's kind of nice to not talk about it in hushed tones, and you can't help but feel, there are people out there, I'm sure, listening to us now, who have just lost somebody, and it's hard to laugh with us if we're laughing about something. But it's just part of living. The dying is just part of living.
That's exactly the point. Everything that happens in death care, it always did, you can go back to history, and health care has always determined how we deal with death care. So if you think back in our time period, when somebody got sick and they went in the hospital and they were close to dying, they went to ICU. You, the family, were sitting in a separate room. You were only allowed in 10 minutes per hour, however that went. And if they actually were going to die, they asked you to go outside until that took place. Now it's all reversed. We're going home to die, or in nursing care. And here's where you see hospice. And hospice is the greatest thing that's ever happened. It's advanced to being much more of a participant in giving comfort to the person dying. And so because of that, many people will visit the family. Instead of going to the funeral afterwards, they visit them before they die.
That's
We're
right.
seeing a lot of this happen, which is much better for everybody.
It's sweet, isn't it?
It is sweet, and it's okay to do. I know there are people who say, well, gee, I wouldn't know what to say if I went over to see John, who's dying. And and I say to them, well, the one thing you probably don't want to do is go in and ask him, how is he doing?
Yeah.
How are you today?
Yeah, right.
You probably don't want to do that.
No.
But nonetheless, the door's open for everybody to do that.
But it allows friends and family to grieve too with
Absolutely.
them in the dying process.
And this grief thing will start earlier than what we all think. And grief is really misunderstood. So I want to tell you this. Grief is stress, extreme stress. And it's physiological. It's not intellectual. So this is like puberty. You're going to go through this because your body changes when you are in stress. Think about when you're stressed. How do you function? You can't. And so the symptoms of grief, and they're short, is loss of memory more than you're comfortable with. Yeah, hard time to follow a thought process. You might get halfway through your story and you'll totally forget what's going on. You know how you go to a room and you wonder why you're in there? Those types of things. Just increases.
It increases.
It increases, right. And then your five senses are diminished. This is where we hear people say they're numb. They're not quite with everything that's going on. Your immune system is compromised, and feelings of being overwhelmed. So that last one, there's only three things that happen here. First is what happened in the dying process. Was this sudden? Was this long term? And I ask everybody how they did in there themselves. And did they understand all their decisions? Like medical, were they treated right? Did they feel everything was fine? And the reason I ask the question is if not, and you feel this could become medical legal, then I would help you get started on that process.
Really?
You have a right to that. The second part is then you would be with me in the funeral, saying we're doing this. And the third part would be taking care of any business or personal items. So I'm going to unoverwhelm you. And I want to make sure you're okay with all of this over here. So when you come here, you're emotionally and physically here. And a lot of people over the years would go to a funeral and afterwards they have no idea what happened. Because this was always in the road.
Yes.
Nobody ever talked to them about how are they. And I actually know what to talk about in that, how to keep them healthy and how to stabilize them a bit so they don't miss this. Well, I don't care if it's cremation and a memorial service or cremation and just a gathering at home or a big funeral. Either way, they have to be okay. In the third part, they can't do anything with these issues over here until they get death certificates. Like Social Security. We're required to file a form with Social Security to notify them. And so when the time comes, if there's a spouse, they have benefits and other issues with Social Security. Don't even call until you get the death certificate. It's the first question they're going to ask you. And then they'll make an appointment for you. So the same with each item that you might have. You want to make sure that you're ready. And I want to emphasize this. In the dying process, you go through negatives. You go through areas that you're not in control because illness takes control of the family, the whole family.
Yes.
Okay, so on the other side, once the loss occurs, I'm going to bring you back to get you in control. That's my expertise, is to give you the information you need for you to start to regain control, which is the beginning stages of keeping you healthy while you grieve instead of getting sick. And that's the key to this. Stay healthy. The person who died does not want you to not do well.
That's true.
Absolutely. And in many cases, they will say to you in the process of your caregiving to them, I want you to take care of yourself. Promise me you will take care of yourself. And when they make that promise, what's happening to the person who's dying is that they can no longer participate in staying well for you, for the care you're giving. And they have to get on with the business of dying. And when they do, a dying person really deals with one thing. They're putting their house in order, unfinished business for them. You and I will never know what that is, but we'll know that that's what's happening to them. So they can't participate over here, and they need to get on with the business of dying.
You have to
And
let
that's
them
what
do it.
Exactly right. That's why you'll hear in hospice many times they'll say to you, when you're with your mom, you tell her that you're okay, and it's okay for her to go. They'll talk about that.
They did say that.
Absolutely. And that's a huge issue.
And they said that's important, otherwise they'll want to linger or try to linger for
because of you. Right, exactly.
Instead of going in and doing their own thing.
That's exactly what I'm
Yes.
explaining. The exact same
Yes.
thing, right? So for people who have questions about those types of things, they can call me, they can call their hospice, they can call their doctor's office, medical advice, but the point is to find out how it works so you're much better off. So you want to keep that promise. And I do bring this up in a funeral arrangement that this is the first time you're going to get to keep that promise with your mom. And you promised her you're going to take care of yourself. So let's keep that promise. And I'm here to support you doing just that.
Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
I used to have AT&T before. I was very dissatisfied with the service, so I switched to San Bruno Cable, and it's pretty good. It's the fastest connection that you can get around here.
I enjoy San Bruno Cable a lot.
Well, what I love about cable is when something goes wrong, you call them up. And I live right around the corner from them. And other people keep trying to sway me away, like better deals and all that, and I always say no.
I love San Bruno Cable. It's doing just fine. It's been fine. I had AT&T. I quit and went back to San Bruno Cable. How do you like that?
I personally like San Bruno Cable.
Welcome back to Senior Moments. I'm Dolly Simonovich, and my guest today is Funeral Director Joseph Stinson. Before the break, Joseph, you were talking about how people are numb when they lose somebody. So wouldn't that make it better for them to prepare ahead of time for their funeral?
Always. It's so much better. You're able to think through, take your time in making decisions, get informed. And in this process, once a person starts to talk about making arrangements ahead of time, I would bring up to them that there's 3 things that they would want to do. And first would be a living trust. If they have assets, they want to put those into a trust. They definitely need to go to an attorney For that, I'm just giving you the title and the topic.
Yes.
And for a funeral, what we would do is we're walking in, or you're walking in, and we're going to make a plan for you. And whatever that is, we're going to put that on a contract and get that price and talk to you about how to plan that. And whatever that figure is, then that amount of money will go into what we use called California Master Trust. And what that means is that you cannot pay the funeral director that money. I can't take the money until death occurs. So we put it into a trust, and the trust belongs to you. So if you moved to Arizona and you died in Arizona, all the money in the trust goes with you. Nothing comes to us.
That kind of answers another question I had. What if I sign a contract with you and you're not here anymore?
Well,
when I die,
perfect point. Good question. If I was to close my practice, by law, I have to notify everybody that has a trust with us. And you have the right to go anywhere else with it because it's your money.
Oh.
If somebody were
would
to...
my contract go with me?
Oh, yeah, it's all yours. It's still all valid. It's
Everything's all
it's-
still set up, and
right,
they
be-
have to, do they, what if their prices are more expensive? Do they follow the same prices?
Well,
as
now
yours?
that we wouldn't know.
Oh, you don't know
Okay,
that.
but everything that's in the trust is yours. You don't lose anything. Okay, plus the interest that it will earn in that trust.
Oh.
So, and in those trusts, that interest earned would be taxable. We pay the taxes. The trust pays its own taxes, so you're not involved with that. The other thing would be advanced health care directives. So you would have the three. You have a living trust, you have a pre-planned funeral, and you would have advanced health care directive. The advanced health care directive is a very important document. And all of healthcare is going to want this some way or another. If you got sick and went into the emergency room, they would stabilize you, and then they're going to talk to you about an advanced healthcare directive, so the healthcare providers know what to do for you. Otherwise, they don't. So you're going to even see it in the emergency room situation that that document's going to be presented. You who are making that, you can appoint an agent. So let's say that you're married, but you don't feel that your husband is capable, for whatever his health reason, to be able to follow through with your health care decisions. So you can appoint your friend Ann and make her the agent. She then supersedes your husband with us. So when death occurs, there's a paragraph in that document that says Ann has the right to control your
So
disposition.
you can name anyone, your sister,
anybody you
your
want.
child,
Right,
or
anybody
anyone.
you want, right, anybody. And so that your rights are protected if you cannot speak for yourself in healthcare. That's why they have that document.
And that protects you for someone who wants to keep you alive for some reason, for their own personal.
That's right, and you say, no, I do not want that, and that's all addressed in the directive. They're great to read because they tell you everything. You have the choice. I want to mention another thing. People come into us and they have what they call powers of attorney or durable power of attorney. And they think they have the legal right to continue on with cremation, sign all the documents and so on. And they can't, because there's nothing in that durable power of attorney that says that they have that right.
You mean before a person dies?
They take care of these people, this person's business or whatever is in that document before they die. After they die, it's null and void then. They have no other rights after that. Only the advanced healthcare directives has the paragraph that says that the agent has the right to continue on in death care.
Well, who do you deal with then if there's no directives? Who do you deal with in the family to make the
legal next of kin.
The legal next?
Whoever it would
and
be.
that would be, if it's a single person, that would be
Well,
sister, brother.
That's right, absolutely.
Child.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, that's how it works. The state puts out a complete list, clear down to like 23rd cousin.
And you go right down.
Hey, you just go right down the
Right
list.
down.
Right, that's how it works. Yeah, exactly.
Somebody who's related to you.
Somebody in there.
Unless you designated a friend.
They'd have to be on the advanced health care
Advanced
directive.
healthcare,
Right, they
okay.
couldn't be, you can't come in and say, when I die, my friend's going to take care of it.
You
What
have
we
to
would do
prevent-
then is say, well, they can participate, but you need to sign all your own papers. So it's all about the legal next of kin.
Would you take us through the process? Let's say I come in and I've lost a spouse. What is the process? I come in to see you, make an appointment, come in to see you, and what happens?
First of all, some people call for an appointment, some people just walk in. Either way, it makes no difference. First thing I'm going to do is ask them about what happened. And so they're going to talk to me. And in that conversation, I'm going to find out where their loved one is. Hospital, they still at home, they in a nursing home, wherever they are. And then we're going to talk about what they want to do, and we're going to get all the documents signed. One is going to be the release. This is all health and safety code documents that every funeral home in California has. And so if a person dies in the hospital, I'm going to have to take that release to the hospital for them to release to us. That's how that all works. And we'll make all these arrangements and see what they want to do in days and time scheduling, and we'll perform those arrangements for them in the time period they wanted, and whether they want cremation or burial. If they want burial, we're going to be in conversation with the cemetery to get that set up all those times. Clergy people, we do all that organization and calling and making sure that everything's set up for their schedule. And then I spend quite a bit of time talking to them about how they're doing. So we want to, again, I'm a grief-based firm, I'm a grief counselor. I want to just tell you a little bit about who becomes a grief counselor, how that works. So people in medicine or clergy, funeral directors, MSWs, people in all of that want to become a grief counselor. They're going to add this to their discipline. It's not necessarily in our curriculums and our licensing and all that. So if you want to become a grief counselor, you're going to go back to school and get your education to be a grief counselor. It's very deep and very, very involved to learn this. So to know the psychological side and the physiological side of how this affects a human being and all of the social network and so on, how that always, you'd have to know how to do all that. Because if somebody were to ask me a question about what's going on with them and I didn't know the answer, I wouldn't be able to be a counselor. And it's not that we have to know everything, but you just can't bring somebody along and get to a point and say, I don't know.
They're going to talk to you about it. You're there. You're patient, you're compassionate, you're helping them deal with stuff, and they're going to ask you just because you're the person there.
That's right, that's right.
That's available, and they're finally being able to talk about it with somebody. And it's kind of nice to know that you spend the time and commiserate with them or advise them or just let them know. I mean, I think it's important to know that it's a physiological thing.
Well, you know, when I was young and two of my friends got killed, there was no such thing in that time period. All you do is get looked at. Well, you're a 14-year-old, and everybody looks that you survived and they didn't. So that's what prompts me to make sure that I'm very present with you and talk to you. Now I will give you an example. Dad dies, and Mom's here, and an adult daughter. And many times the adult daughter will be saying to herself, my dad died, I have no time for me, I need to take care of my mom. And I actually bring this up. Not that you would do it, but I said, I'm going to use this for an example. And my question is, how would you know what to do for your mom? She's been married 50 years. She's known her husband longer than they know you. And she's never been without him. And this is the beginning of her on that journey to be without him. And she has no idea what this is about. So if you take care of you and let your mom take care of herself, and I'm available, I don't charge for all these things, for as long as you ever need me, and we'll keep you in the right direction. So one of the things that I would tell the daughter is that your mother has to be in a safe, non-judgmental environment as well as you, so you can say, think, and do anything you want, and nobody can try to fix you.
That's the big one, isn't it?
That's the big one, exactly.
Nobody trying to fix you.
Because the longer
Because you're not broken.
That's right, you're not broken.
You're just grieving.
The longer you are allowed to do that process, eventually you're going to start to trust your thoughts and feelings, and when you do, the body will build coping skills and will keep you healthy. If your mother thinks that you're not taking care of yourself, she'll stop taking care of herself because she's your mom, and she's going to come over to take care of you. Now we have two of you.
That's right.
So we don't want to go down that road. We want to give you this freedom to figure out what you're going to do, and I'll be your support person for as long as you need it.
Okay, so now the process changes a little if you do this for yourself.
Sure.
Before you die, you can go in and you don't have to do the grief counseling or anything. You could discuss it, and people can tell you exactly what they want, and you get their wishes, and you can laugh about it, you can talk about it, and you can almost not necessarily enjoy the process.
Well, we try to, keep it up. One thing I do talk to people, this is a good question, and this happens a lot. So the husband and wife come in, and they're going to make these arrangements for themselves. Okay. And we'll just use cremation. So they both are going to plan for a direct cremation. When they die, there's going to be no viewing, no visitations, right? But they're going to be direct cremation. They have a legal right to do this. When they go back home, let's say they have 2 children. So they go back home, I advise them, you're going to tell your children what you just did. Here's all the papers, here's everything. Okay? And then don't say another word. And watch for their reactions. Let them do whatever they want, because you actually haven't died. It's irrelevant. Because when the time comes that you die, they're going to be older, so will you, and we'll see what happens then. But in the meantime, let them talk it through. That's their therapy.
That's right.
They need to do that. And so when we talk about this, when you come in ahead of time, or we're talking about deaf people watching this show, one of the things that can happen to them is they start trying to deal with their own mortality. That's a grief issue.
As soon as they find out that their parents are preparing for
That's right. That's
death,
right. That's right.
then they start going through it
Exactly
themselves.
right.
Isn't that interesting?
That's why you see less and less people going to funerals and the funeral situation, because when you went to visit at the funeral home, it forced you into grief, which we explained what it is, and because it forces you to deal with your own mortality. Am I next? Those types of things, or what's going to happen to me. And that's why all that starts coming up at the same time. You know, I have to say this, that grief affects death, divorce, loss of job, aging, retirement, moving from your homestead. All loss equals change. And so when you have a loss, you're changing to something else, and that's going to create the same reactions.
We had a discussion with a grief counselor one time, and I thought, you know, you're trained from the time you're a child to deal with grief.
Absolutely.
And the grief might be that you dropped your popsicle,
That's right.
or your team lost a game, and those are little mini griefs.
That's exactly right.
But all of them build up to help you handle
That's the point.
the grief of
It's
losing
not,
a parent.
grief is
or
not a
some-
negative issue.
Oh, it isn't
No, it's part of our human nature.
part of life.
So you have an infant. An infant is going to eventually become a toddler. So the infant is going to give up infant behavior to change to toddler behavior. Loss equals change. That's where we first see it. So it's a natural part of our life to have this go on. When there is a death, we all remember this. We were the little kids, and we had parents, and we had grandparents. Then we moved up that we're the parents, and then next thing you know, we're the grandparents. So through all of those generations actually have to do with our maturation process. They have a lot to do with how we're going to develop. And so it's all part of our life. It's a natural process that we go through.
It's just amazing to hear you talk about it so easily, too, bringing up things that I hadn't even considered.
Right.
You know, I looked at your website. Let's talk about that for a minute. And I was really impressed with it because on it talks about cremation mainly. And if you want just the plain old cremation, you take package A, and this is what it covers, and this is the price. Package B, it adds a little bit more, and this is the price of this, 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 and this, but you don't have to have this if you don't want to.
Right.
And I really liked the fact that it took the mystery out of it. You know, I was telling you how death has such
Yeah,
mystery.
I agree.
Well, it took the mystery out of it, so I know what it would cost to just be cremated. And then I noticed you had some urns, and some of them were little boxes, and I thought, gee, you know, you can buy your little box ahead of time and keep your jewelry in it.
That's
you know,
a good
and
idea.
when
Never
you-
thought of that. That's a great idea. I like that. Oh my goodness, that's perfect. Why don't we have that on there? We're going to put that on there. I like it. Yeah, that's good.
But then I noticed that you sold caskets too.
Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah. So some people are going to use caskets that can be cremated, and they have to be wood. You can't cremate metal.
Mm-hmm.
There are very, very few people who buy a metal casket. That's for burial, obviously. And then there's other caskets we have on there. I don't know if you saw the wicker.
Yes, that's a green
Those
one.
are all green caskets.
And are those used for like green burial at that
Yes,
Half Moon
yes,
Bay?
right.
Or,
That's
so
right.
you wouldn't cremate a person with
Yes, yes, because when my mother, who's originally from Pennsylvania and lived out here in her last years, and when she died, we had a little viewing and ceremony and religious service for her at Holy Cross, but she was in
the wicker.
the wicker casket, right?
What's the inside like?
It's lined, beautifully lined.
Oh,
like
is it?
And the whole lid comes off.
Uh-huh.
You know, so, and we were able to all stand around her.
Oh,
and,
that's so
yeah,
sweet.
and
Now, was there a cardboard
so
one too?
the cardboard part is when any funeral home goes to a crematory. The crematory requires that the deceased be placed in a cardboard, specially designed for this. And the reason that they require that is for handling.
Oh.
So everybody's cremated in that. When a person is cremated, we only, what comes back to the family are just human bone. There is no anything else. Even if there's a casket, that's all gone. Just the human bone is what is brought back to the family.
There's no ash, just bone?
The ash is just a common word, like cancer is a common word anymore, you know. And so it really is just human bone. That's what's there. No ash.
Did I read this correctly, where there's an actual thing where you can view the cremation?
Yeah, there's what's called witness cremation.
Witness cremation?
So what you view is you're actually going to view either that cardboard container holding your loved one or the casket you purchased if we had a service and you wanted that choice. You're going to watch them open the door. This is called a retort. Okay, and so they're going to watch them open that door, and then that casket or cardboard is going to be placed in there.
Is it slide in?
Yeah, it slides right in.
Slides
It's made
right
for all
in.
that. It's all
It's
designed
made.
for that. And then that door closes, and then the cremation will begin. And that's called a witness cremation. You actually don't see the cremation take place itself.
So that's almost like staying at the cemetery and watching somebody being buried. You could.
You know, that's an
It's
excellent.
like a witness. You're witnessing it, so you know it's your wishes have been done, or that their wishes have been done.
Right. That's an excellent point. In the family setting, there usually is a person in there who's in charge of making sure this goes from the beginning to the end. And through history, all my career, I've seen that forever. So they would stay at the cemetery, watch the casket lowered, have everything put on, clear to the grass, and then they feel that they've accomplished, and the family
They've
feels
done their
wonderful.
job.
They've done their job. And so sometimes you see people wanting the witness cremation for that same reason. And there's many religious issues behind it also. But that,
And what would they be?
well, there's a lot of different religions and people from different parts of the country that's what they do. They witness cremations, and so they would always be there for that. So it varies, believe me, all over the place. But there's a lot of other reasons, not just that finishing like that. There's a lot of religious reasons for cremation too.
Well, I'd like to invite people to look at your website, because wow, I was reading and I was reading and I was reading, and I thought, wow, this is really interesting. I'm going down this. That's where I learned a lot of things that I could ask you about today just from your website. So for people who don't know what they want right now, I'd really recommend. It's really excellent.
About that website, sometimes I have to go reread it. So, and here's the other thing too. I have to tell you this about websites. So early on, the question was, who's going to view the website? This is all written with people that were doing websites. And so, well, this age group and that age group and all that, and I could never quite go along with all that. So this one lady calls, and she kind of told us her age. So she was in her 80s, I believe, and she was on our website while she was talking to us. So we learned immediately, don't get this age thing in here at all. You know, you just pay attention to that person.
Yes.
And people feel comfortable to talk to us when they go there.
You know, I was talking to my friends yesterday, telling them I was going to talk to you today, and one of my friends says, Joseph Stinson. She says, I know him. You helped her with two of her relatives, I think her mother and her aunt, and she was just so impressed with you. She thought you were just a delight
Well, I
in
appreciate
a
it.
terrible situation.
Well, that's kind of you to bring it up too. I appreciate that. That's
Let's
great.
leave it there, and we'll take another break.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
They got quite a few good channels on it, and we enjoy watching all the different kind of movies and what you guys have.
It's local. When I need help, I actually talk with people.
They said we'd be out in a day or so, and they were there. we call them up and somebody comes out to the house and takes care of our issues right away.
No contract you have to sign. Keep up the good work.
Thank you for choosing San Bruno Cable.
Hi, welcome back to Senior Moments. I'm Dolly Simonovich here with Funeral Director Joseph Stinson. Now, what happens if somebody doesn't make plans, or else they tell their daughter what they want, and the daughter says this is what she wanted, and the son comes along and says, no, I want this? What happens? Do you get that family squabbling in there?
Oh, absolutely. So if the person who died had not made any plans, we're going to actually talk to the survivors, because they're equal. They're children. So we would actually talk to them and say, you know, did your mom say anything? Did she give you an idea what she wanted, etc.? We're going to inform you of all your choices. Like you say on the website, there's the packages. You can go, here they are. Here's all the different things you can do. And so you have to make the decision. We can't make the decision for you. And the way the law works in California is this. Not that this happens. I mean, these are the children. They're going to take care of their mother. But legally, they don't have to. They can just nothing.
They can just say you do it.
No, they can say they don't have to take. They don't even have to show up.
Really?
Really.
And I was going to ask you a question. How about if the siblings aren't talking to each other? You know,
happens
that happens.
A lot. Oh yes, that happens a lot. Exactly.
Or they hate their.
So, absolutely right. Everything you can imagine is going to happen.
They hate their loved one.
Absolutely right. Which I just want to tell you this one point about grief. In the grief world, I'm going to ask the question: what relationship are you grieving? The one you had, or the one you did not have? And so we're going to cover that. Absolutely, we're going to cover all that because that's all there to be covered. So when people have a problem within the family, it's really for them to try to work it out. We have attorneys and we can do some things like that, but we would turn things over probably to the public administrator of the county first and let them see how some things are going to work there and work back and forth. We're not going to move until this is all settled. That's all there is to it. It is not our responsibility, it's yours. And until you make a definitive decision, we can't do anything.
So some families have been grieving the loss of their parent before the parent even died.
Absolutely.
So when the actual death comes about, they don't even deal with it? They just walk away?
Because there has been no relationship anyway.
Okay, well what if the person who dies doesn't have any money?
So the way that the states work, or the counties, let's say the counties work, is that if a person dies and they have nothing, let's say they find somebody on the street, a homeless person, well then the county has an entire process of how they're going to handle that. Okay, and that's all set up through the coroner or the medical examiner of the county, whatever county that is.
Are they usually cremated?
Yes, exactly right.
But
there's a time period, not to interrupt you, but there's a time period, they wait.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't happen like the next day.
Uh-huh.
They would have to see if there is any relatives, they'll do a complete investigation.
Try to find somebody.
Yeah, it's very, very involved and can be lengthy.
And you just keep that person under refrigeration during that time?
Exactly.
They're not embalmed usually then?
No, not at all, ever.
When I was growing up, they had something called pauper graves.
Right.
They don't do that anymore.
Not really. It's not quite that way, but in a sense, you know, I mean, it's not far from it. They're going to cremate. They're going to place the cremated remains in a place, a cemetery where they have a contract, but that's between the coroner's office or the medical examiner.
Can't they just spread them out over the Pacific, or?
No, they won't do that.
They don't do that.
They won't do that. No, for liability issues.
Can that be done?
Yeah, we do a lot of scattering.
I thought it was illegal to spread it out over the ocean.
No, it's perfect. We do that all the time. A lot of
do
people.
you?
So on a death certificate in California, you have three choices. After cremation, cremated remains go back to your residence, and that'll be on the death certificate and the permits. They can be placed in a cemetery, name a cemetery, so on, or scattered at sea, off the coast of San Mateo County, etc., off the coast of San Francisco County, and that has to be on there. Now you can go do it yourself. You can, but if you hire somebody, you're going to only be able to hire somebody who is a licensed scatterer in California.
But you can just take a boat out and go do it yourself.
You can do it yourself, right? Exactly.
Okay. They don't want you scattering it in a lake.
You know, when it gets down to those types
Go
of
to the
things,
ocean.
yeah, just the ocean, we can't put that on a death certificate.
No.
So you're going to go do that yourself. We wouldn't know anything about it. We would return cremated remains to you. The way the law works, once the cremated remains go back to you at home, whatever you do with them is up to you.
Oh, okay.
There's nobody going to follow that. You don't have to do anything else.
Keep it forever?
You can do that too. Yeah, right, exactly. Right. I do caution people because I ask them, you know, you're going to take these cremated remains home, and what are you eventually going to do?
You know, that's a good point.
Oh, yeah, because they...
Is it going to sit up on your mantelpiece for 30 years? Or?
Well, your name's on the death certificate, or on the permit, that they're returned to you. So that if something happens to you, how is somebody going to eventually take over to do something with them, because we didn't refile this permit? So we have to go through all the fact of that. And then we'd have to refile a permit to see. But people say to me, well, after I die, my daughter's going to take them. So I say to them, how do you know that's going to happen? You don't.
So once they get the remains, can they give it to their daughter?
They can give it to anybody.
Oh, okay.
But what I'm trying to get to is, if your name is on that permit, I want you to write a little note, date it, and sign it, that if something happens to you, what happens to the cremated remains? You need to give permission, because otherwise it gets cumbersome. So I'm trying to, it's great to take them home, but a home is not a permanent place.
Yeah.
See, that's what you're trying to help them with.
Yes.
And so there are a lot of people out there, there's been all kinds of surveys and studies done about how many people have cremated remains at home, including me. I have my mother, and I have my father-in-law, my wife's father. Now we know where they'll go, but you know, we're like everybody else.
So
to do it is like,
it's almost better to decide right then where it's going to be. You know, if you're going to scatter it, or if you're going to bury it someplace, get it taken care of, and then you know where it is forever.
it's in your hands. You take care of it.
Yeah.
To try to say I'm going to avoid this, and then whoever's next in my family will take over, that's where the complications come in. So to be fair to them, you want to address the issue. And if anybody has a problem, they call me. I'll help them through it. You know, it's not. There's no fees involved. It's not the point. The point is help them get confident information to make those decisions. Right.
Yes. That's probably one of the best reasons to take care of your trust, take care of your directives and so on. Otherwise, the state gets involved and they go at their own sweet time, don't they?
Perfect advice.
And you're at their mercy once it goes to them.
And you were the legal next of kin. You were the person in charge. So once cremated remains come back, you want to still assume that role. And it's perfectly fine to take them home with you. A lot of that has to do with maybe you're not ready for separation yet, you know, and that's all great. But eventually you're going to want to let it be known where they're supposed to go.
Yeah, do something with them.
Give them a little note. That helps everybody.
Who takes care of people's debts when they die?
So when a person dies, you know, the legal next of kin, I would say 95% of the time are there and going to take care of everything, regardless of choice of service, what they want to do. Every once in a while, you will get people who had no relationship. Let's say a brother dies, and I had no relationship with them, and they don't want to take any responsibility for dealing with their death, and that happens. That's going to pop up for sure.
You don't put a lien on their property or anything?
We can't do anything.
Really?
No. Not at all.
Oh.
We go to the public administrator.
And can they do it?
They don't go after that person who would be the legal next of kin.
No,
Nobody can go.
I meant
but they
just
go
going
after
after
they go and they investigate the estate of that
the
person
estate.
who died, if there is
so
one.
the estate should pay, if
Yeah,
there
that's
is,
how.
if
Then
there
the
is
public,
one.
we can proceed like with cremation, and then that account will go to the public administrator. Once they get through many of the things, then they'll pay us.
When there's no plans and there's nobody really to talk to about anything, you deal more with the government agencies.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So it's easy to look at it this way. No matter what happens, there is a process, a program that you're going to follow, and to make it all work. And it does. You just have to be patient with some of these, you know.
Yes.
Or in some cases, maybe some funeral homes don't want to go and deal with those agencies. We do. So you know, that would be just our choice, not a requirement.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's just however you want to do things, and we do a lot of that.
Would you talk a little bit about the donor program?
The donor
People-
program,
People
sure.
want to donate their body to science, or maybe if they've got a nice strong heart or whatever, if they're killed in an accident or whatever. What do you do in things like that?
So the way the donor program works is this. If you wanted to donate your body to science, there are companies, and I would advise everybody to go online to look this up, because there's all kind of papers and forms and the process, and that company will take you through it. There are some, like UCSF, Stanford, some of those teaching hospitals, you can donate your body to them, but you really have to call them and get involved in that program. You just can't have a death and then call and they're going to do that. It's not going to work.
They don't
that way.
want you.
They don't, because
I mean,
they may
they
base,
need to have something set up where
exactly ahead
to
of time,
accept you.
and they might only be looking for certain causes of death. See, they're doing research, or they're both teaching hospitals.
So if somebody dies of old age, would they want?
If they're researching that and they're heavy into that, then you'd be a perfect candidate.
How about anatomy? Wouldn't it be good for anatomy, or is
They have all that.
anatomy so good right now? They
Well,
don't really
they
need
have
to.
all that. That's all. That's from class to class to class.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, that's all done. That's not new. They study disease or certain types of rare diseases. So the advice would be, if you think you want to donate your body to science, you want to get in touch with those proper people, and they are on the internet to find.
So if let's say I wanted to donate my corneas, isn't that one of the things?
Right.
So I would go online and check out cornea.
You can go
Donation.
online too, and you can also check with your healthcare provider.
Oh, really?
Really, because you're going to need advice on this. So there's two different things here related to donation like that. So if you're going to donate organs, that's going to be very, very specific to age. And when you are donating organs, you have to be pronounced brain dead, no activity. And once that happens, then you can qualify to be a donor. Now there's tissue matches going on all over the place, and hooking you up with the right recipient. So once that program starts, it's huge. A lot of medical people involved on both teams, on the donor and the recipient. Once the donor goes into the operating room, and they are going to disconnect life support at that point, and they get ready to remove the heart, lung, etc., and there's teams for every one of these, they're going to pronounce the death, and that would be the time of death on the death certificate when they do that. For people who want to donate cornea, inner ear, which are now tissue donations, not organ donations.
Inner ear, I've never heard of the
Yeah,
inner
there's
ear.
3 incus malleus and stapes inside the ear that can be removed and taken.
Does that
again.
help people hear?
Yeah, absolutely. Right, exactly.
Really?
Transplants, right. And even like a cornea transplant, it's only the very outside part of that, And so, and then there would be long bone and skin. So all this can be done. So I would say more people are tissue donors than organ donors. Is how it actually works.
Would they really want organ of a 70-year-old or a 75-year-old?
It all depends again on causes of death. So I'm sure you've heard of people who are going to go through chemo. And now they have what they call the intensive chemo, where you're going to get powerful chemo up front all at once. Well, you have to physiologically be very healthy to do that. So they just found these tumors, but nothing has metastasized, and your body has not begun to break down because of it. So they can do that. So it's an intensive. And the same thing if you were sick and they're going to give you chemo, it's low doses, longer. Same thing if they're going to do any kind of this. It depends on how physiologically healthy you are, whether they can actually use these. So even in cornea transplants, your eyes are able to be used for the actual transplant, the cornea, or research only. The donor, the family who's signing all the documents, has the right to know that. Because if they're not going to be used for transplant, you may not be interested in it being used for research. You have the right to that choice.
So are you involved with any of that? Because you're saying you don't get the person until the person's dead.
Right, well, you get them
So-
after all that's done.
Yes, so
Right, exactly.
so all of that stuff is taken care of in the
Right.
hospital while the person is still alive with no brain activity?
So a person, we'll say a young person has an accident, automobile accident, they come into the hospital and they had head injury. So there's no brain activity. So they're going to go through the process to verify that. It takes days of neurologists doing this work. And once they declare them that way, then they start talking to the family about donating organs. And so that's how it will work. And then after the organs are all finished, then the team for the tissue comes in and would do that. That's all signed permission for all that, obviously, but that's how it would work.
Do they keep these things alive somehow in between, or do they get the recipient in right away?
It's all right away.
Everybody's
Well, everybody's right away. So if when that heart comes out, that heart is on its way to whatever location it is, and the recipient is already in the hospital.
Astounding,
waiting
isn't
for
it?
the transplant. It's astounding. What's astounding is how many people are involved in this process. You know,
Are there a lot of donors?
Well, I don't mean the donors, I mean the medical people. I should clarify that.
The medical
staff
people.
is incredible. It could be 30, 40 people involved here. The families that allow this to happen are the people you have to, you know, I don't know what you could say. They're saints. Even donating organ or tissue, all that is just amazing.
Yes.
How far advanced all this has gone these days. Yes. So, you know, older people, you know, we're not going to be able to do too much donations, but you know, sometimes in the 40s, 50s, 60s, maybe they can still do it, you know, in that age group. But I'd have everybody talk to their medical people. That's who you have to talk to about this.
So not the funeral director.
Not us, no.
I think a lot of us have this mistaken belief that
we do it.
Yeah, that they just cut everything out when you're before you're involved, whatever.
No, this is very, very, very scientific that this goes on. Yes. And a lot of work. You know, these are programs that nobody hears about or sees because you don't have access to it. You don't see any of it.
Right.
You know, but it's huge how this works and the people whose lives are saved by these issues.
Yes.
All right.
Well, Joe, is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to talk about today?
We want you to be able to take a look at your end-of-life issues, whether they be your financial issues, the funeral issues, and things like that, informing other family members of your choices. I am the first to tell you how hard that is to talk about. So if you have a question or something would help you get to that point, you can call me. Call your local funeral director, whatever you think is the best. And get informed before you make decisions. And if you don't do it and you never do it, it's all okay.
And don't deny it because you're going to die.
Well,
period.
you know, we're working on a program
Someday.
so you don't die. And well, as soon as I get that, I'll call you and we'll do another show. Okay. You know what I mean? Right. I keep my hopes up for that. Right, exactly. So. And,
I don't know. I think you got to rest every once in a while.
We need a big long
in
rest.
Between
exactly.
lives.
Right. Yeah, there you go. I like that. That's even better. Maybe we'll work on that one. That's good. I like it. So I thank you.
And I thank
You're
you
excellent
for joining
at this.
us.
Yeah, I appreciate this.
And thank you for joining us. See you next time on Senior Moments.